Hey y'all, it's Stephen Van Kampen-Lewis on July 30th. I took the day off from work to go hang out with the kids and wife at a water park on the north side of Austin. And we had lots of fun, but while everybody's sleeping, I figured I'd film an episode and then publish it tomorrow on Saturday. But I wanted to do an update on my Cyrtopodiums behind me and to let y'all know that, here at the end of July, it's finally starting to get hot again. It's close to 100 degrees right now. But basically, this time of year is kind of boring when it comes to orchids. You're not really repotting if you can avoid it because everything is typically in active growth and you don't see a whole lot of blooms. So this time of year, I'll be honest, I kind of struggle with some topics to come up with y'all and chat with y'all about. So if you have something you want to hear about, let me know. Especially Cattleyas, Catasetums, Ancilea, these guys behind me, Cyrtopodiums, any or just general summertime growing. Let me know what you want me to chat about, and I will do it. But in the meantime, for today, I want to get a quick sort of sneak peek at what these guys are doing and give you an update of what your Cyrtopodium should look like. And I also want to let you know that Fred Clarke is selling Cyrtopodium punctatum on his current Catasetum list. So if you're interested in getting that one, check it out. It is, I believe it's a selfing of an awarded clone, and I bet it's going to be really cool. So let me turn the camera around and we'll take a look at the Cyrtopodiums. All right, so here's a quick overview of my Cyrtopodium collection and what they look like. As you can see, they're this sort of combination of palm tree and sort of corn stalks growing at this point. You can see them all kind of waving, flapping here in the breeze. Of course, some species are larger than others. In fact, my largest in the back that you can see over there, that is my punctatum. And then my second largest is the St. Ledgerianum here. And then we have plenty of other large ones and some small ones actually. But basically, if you're growing Cyrtopodium, they should be in full sun most of the time. If they're epiphytic, they should be getting an epiphytic mix. And if they are terrestrials, they should be in a terrestrial mix. I did a repotting video, which I'll link below. I did a repotting video of this group a couple months ago. So if you're curious about the different types of potting media, check that video out. But for now, we will take a look at these guys. And as I mentioned, there are epiphytes and terrestrials. They do grow a bit differently, and there's not a whole lot of information online about them, so I'm kind of learning as I'm going, and I'll show you an example of that right now. But first, let's start off with the St. Ledgerianum, which is an epiphytic plant. This one will grow in the tops of tall palm trees in central Brazil, and it's one of the few epiphytes. Actually, most of the Cyrtopodiums are terrestrial. So I've got this one in a terrestrial mix here. It's nothing special. It is more water retentive than what I have for my Cattleyas. I've got some coconut coir on top and some bark down below, and then I think there's something else below that. But one of the telltale signs of having an epiphytic Cyrtopodium is you get these aerial roots. So you can see, let me zoom in. Actually, I'll zoom in on these guys over here. And you can see that they just grow straight up. These little green guys will just eventually turn into these white wispy things, and they are designed to catch debris. And that debris will then break down. Typically it's plant material or lizard poop or bird poop or whatever's available, and they'll create a basket. And that basket will really catch a lot of material, and it's a sort of a harvested or a captured fertilizer, and you can really see it on this plant here. So this is Cyrtopodium holstei, which I've always thought, or I had pegged as a terrestrial, and so it got my terrestrial mix. But as you can see, this plant has tons of these aerial roots, saying that it thinks it's an epiphyte. So what I'm going to have to do is go through my photos and see what these flowers look like and see if it's mislabeled, or if I had looked this up incorrectly and found that it is a terrestrial, or read that it's a terrestrial and it's actually not. So I'm just moving around either side so you can see this sort of very typical Cyrtopodium look to it. Same with the St. Ledgerinum here. This is long cigar-shaped bulb, and then these big floppy leaves here. And in the case of these two plants, the aerial roots. If we skip over to my punctatum, you can see that this thing is huge. So I'm 6 feet tall. You know, this plant is on a table, so it's probably a good 4 feet tall or so, and it's monstrous. So if you are space constrained, this is probably not the species for you. This one's been growing really nice for me for about 5 or 6 years, and I got this from my friend Monica. And as I mentioned, it is Cyrtopodium punctatum, and that species is known to be a native to Florida, but it's also found through Mexico, Central America, and into Brazil, and even down into Argentina. So this is a very wide-ranging species. And you can see it'll probably, you know, it might get a little taller, but that's pretty much it for right now. I suspect, well, actually you can see how much taller last year's bulb got. So I would anticipate that this one will be the same size or even taller. The secondary bulb is a little behind in its growth, but whether it catches up to this one, I'm not entirely sure. But in any case, I hope that the bulbs will be as wide and as tall or taller, and produce incredible blooms in the spring. Over here we have some of the smaller Cyrtopodiums. These are a little shorter statured. This is Cyrtopodium paniculatum. And as you can see, if you are a Cyrtopodium fan and you're a little more space constrained, this one is much more reasonably sized. This one's kind of difficult to pick up though, so if you can find one, I would snap it up. This one over here, this one is Cyrtopodium flavum and has really nice yellow flowers that blooms on a new growth, and has really nice yellow flowers, and I'm kind of surprised that I didn't get a new flower spike from that new growth, and this one can bloom for me twice a year. I keep selfing it, and those seedlings are infertile, and I'm trying to send them over to James Rose, who really likes the flowers of this one, but you know, he doesn't seem to be able to find viable seed in them, so I think this one is not conducive to selfing. So this is a species whose tag has fallen off. I'll try and find it. I'm not entirely sure what it is. This could be my VIRESCENS. In fact, I suspect that's what it is. This is potted in an epiphyte mix, and you can see it's got some epiphytic roots here. I think this year it'll put out a nice big basket of roots, and you can see that the roots are really popping out the top here, and they are popping out the bottom. So this is a very happy plant that's doing extraordinarily well. This is a punctatum that I have. I've got it in terrestrial mix. It wasn't looking too good for me last year. It's a much smaller plant than any punctatum I've ever seen. So I'm not entirely sure that it is punctatum. It has very interesting blooms that kind of look like punctatum, but let's face it, so many of these species have blooms that look like punctatum. So I don't know what this one is. It could be something cool, or it could just be a small statured variety of punctatum, which would also be pretty cool. This is Cyrtopodium labeled as Desiratum. I have not seen any reference to a Desiratum online or in the literature. It's one that I got from Todd over there in Florida. He's got a YouTube channel, Todd's Tropicals, and he is growing a bunch of these. He got it from an American vendor. So we'll see what it looks like when it blooms. Hopefully it is strong enough to bloom this spring, and maybe we'll get an identification. I got these two as imports from Floralia about a year ago. So they are still not quite adjusted to our seasons. This is Cyrtopodium alice, and then I'll have pink flowers. And this one is Cyrtopodium Blanchetti, or Blanchetti, excuse me, which has really cool red and yellow flowers. And both of these are doing well. They are kind of dormant. This one is definitely dormant. This one has put out this growth and is just kind of stalled out. But you know, that happens with the imports. Sometimes they take a little while to adjust, and that's normal. Both of them look like they're doing fine. You'll notice that the bulbs are kind of buried. These two species typically grow with their bulbs buried as fire protection over there in Brazil. So they will, as the fires come through, the bulbs and the roots are fairly well protected, even though the leaves are typically lost in the fire. And finally, this one is actually my Cyrtopodium virescens, so I'll have to figure out what that other plant with no tag is when it blooms, unfortunately. That's what happens when you have a family of raccoons that comes out and plays in your plants every night. Things get a little messy. But again, this is another sort of yellow and red flower. Really cool, and you can see the bulbs are more squatty and less elongated than some of the other species that we've profiled. So, hopefully your Cyrtopodiums look similar. And if you're interested in getting Cyrtopodiums, like I said, check out Fred Clarke's list for Cyrtopodium punctatum, and hopefully you will be able to grow them as well as I do. And you know, there really isn't much information about this group, so I'm going to see if I can write an article for AOS magazine and see if we can get something updated since 1995, which was the last time that AOS did really anything about Cyrtopodiums. I think it's about time for some new literature. Anyway, talk to y'all later.